Thanks so much, Emery. We're glad to be here. My name is Tierney Steelberg, and I'm the Digital Pedagogy and Scholarship Technologist here at Guilford College.
My name is Eric Mortensen, and I'm an Associate Professor of Religious Studies and run the International Studies program also at Guilford College.
And we're here to talk to you about a course that we taught, Defense Against the Dark Arts. So this session is entitled Digital Defense Against the Dark Arts, a Faculty-Librarian Course Collaboration. So that's us, a little bit about us. This is a course that we taught over the course of fall 2018, but our collaboration around this course started earlier than that, when we, first started talking about collaborating and started planning to revamp this course, which was one that Eric had taught previously in the past under the title Witches, Ghosts, and Demons.
Yes. So Tierney and I traveled together to an Iliad's Digital Humanities Institute, and we collaborated as well on a previous course about the digital Silk Road. So we had worked together before, and I asked Tierney if Tierney would be willing to join me in totally overhauling a course that I had been teaching to make it into one that emphasizes digital scholarship and collaboration for the students. And I also very deeply believe and have long tried to pioneer at Guilford College, team teaching. So we took as our starting point, a fundamental premise that the evaluation of process over product would be one of the most important aspects of how we would redesign the course. But it required a lot more than just thinking about evaluating process over product. It had to do, therefore, with what the main assignment would be, about how much of the course would need to change in terms of content, and about how we would try to design the course in terms of thinking mindfully about our roles as instructors in a team teaching context.
Yeah. And like Eric was saying, this was something we'd had a little bit of experience with in the past from our work together for a course that Eric co-taught with an associate professor, Professor Jerome Chen, in the history department here at Guilford, entitled The Digital Silk Road, which was taught over the course of fall 2016. And I came on board for that course as a librarian, but kind of embedded in the course, and I helped plan the project. I attended this institute, the Iliad's Institute, with Eric and with some Guilford colleagues and some students, and we kind of conceptualized the digital project aspect of the course. And then I came in and taught sessions for the students. So we kind of wanted to expand upon that model, which we found to be successful with this course, Defense Against the Dark Arts, and fully integrate or even more fully integrate the digital project in the course, and bring me on board as a full co-teacher, not just someone teaching a handful of guest sessions. And so this is the central digital project for that course was also a website with different components that different research projects, but the students did work in teams. So we took a lot from that model and expanded upon it in this class, Defense Against the Dark Arts. So a little bit about the content of the course.
Well, my own academic expertise is in Tibetan studies. I'm a professor of religious studies who, in a sense, is a practicing folklorist and anthropologist. So I teach a lot of courses in comparative theory and a lot of courses on East Asian religion. But in one of the comparative theory courses I teach, and basically a course in comparative religion, it was titled Witches, Ghosts, and Demons. And it's a course that's global in scope. It explores the role of othering, fear, the monstrous, mechanisms of magic, cross-cultural relativism in the study of religion. And we have thematic units in the course where we focus in a little bit more deeply on discourse surrounding so-called witchcraft in sub-Saharan Africa, ghosts and the ghostly in Japan, demonology in Europe and Tibet. We read about vampires. We have a unit on teenage witches in America. And throughout the course, we involve a lot of comparative religious theory that is not culturally contextualized specifically. And so the student collaborative projects, which is the centerpiece of the course academically for the students, above and beyond weekly, daily readings, These comparative projects analyzed a particular class of monster, a particular beastie, explicitly in a comparative sense. So for example, one might study vampires in Great Britain and in southern Slavic regions, or ghosts in North Carolina and in Japan. But it could not be a non-comparative project. So that was sort of the centerpiece assignment, content-wise, of the course.
Yeah, and so the most of the content of the course, I mean, didn't change from what it was originally set out as.
Right, we had to cut
the major pieces of the content kind of remain the same. The theoretical framework and a lot of the kind of case studies and the readings. Things were cut, but the digital project and the way we kind of work things in, it was overlaid onto an existing framework, a course that Eric had been working on.
Yes.
For
so we took a pre-existing course and overhauled it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we can talk a little bit. Oh, it looks like my slides got a little bit messed up here. I'm just gonna. Oops, sorry. Sorry, for some reason, sorry, the image is going over the text, which, well.
Anyway, that says transfiguring the course.
I'll just keep going, yeah, but transfiguring the course, we can talk a little bit about the transfiguration process that we underwent, or that the course underwent, rather. So a little bit about our goals. So we wanted to continue to pioneer digital scholarship at Guilford and build upon the work that we had done and that others had done here at the college, and emphasize student collaboration and process over product. And that was something that was very important to us and that we kept in mind throughout
that's a major pedagogical shift from the initial iteration of the course, and in general from what we do in the classroom. We're so accustomed as professors in the humanities, for example, of assigning something like a research paper and evaluating the product. But here the emphasis is on evaluating the process of creating the product rather than just the product itself.
Yeah, and through this work, we did want to augment students' own skill sets to include digital competencies. So like website building, creating kind of dynamic multimedia content with some tools that we'll talk about a little bit more later. And then thinking too about the skill sets that go along with those digital competencies. So things like writing for the web, and how does that differ from writing for a research paper and that kind of thing.
We also wanted to build something that would be able to stick around for future incarnations of the course. So the website that we did end up building will keep, and the next time we teach the course, the student projects will be added to the ones from the last time we taught the course, and it will grow as a website, a public-facing website. And we like this model a lot. It's inspirational to the students, and they feel like they're contributing to a project that does become truly public-facing and useful to the general public.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're excited to teach this in the future and for students' work to be able to build off of one another, and the website to continue to grow as students choose other beasties for the bestiary. And as we set out to do this, we received a lot of support from Hagee Library and from faculty development here at Guilford College. So we just want to acknowledge the fact that the support we received on campus helped us, help make this possible.
And we would recommend that you, if you're hoping to do or ever considering doing something similar, to seek it out in advance, to try to get some faculty development funding if possible, or library support specifically, or digital humanities support, wherever it's coming from in your institution, if there is any, to try to help cut yourself some time and space that it takes to do this overhaul and design. We spent a lot of time and hours prior to the course rethinking this project, and you'll want to consider getting some support for that yourselves.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So with those goals in mind, some of the major changes that we made from the course as it originally existed the last time Eric taught it, and to this past fall when we team taught it together. So first of all, we totally reconceptualized the course as a team taught endeavor, and something that was on both of our minds was an explicit attempt to kind of disrupt the binary that can exist, the dichotomy that can exist between a librarian and a content professor.
So we want to emphasize this if possible. One of the things we're most sort of excited about what we managed to pull off and will continue to do, and what we want to be encouraging about for others, is the idea that we were equal teachers in the course. It was not as though I was this religious studies professor and Tierney was a digital librarian who was there to assist me. We wanted to immediately get rid of that concept in the minds of our students, in our own way of approaching it, so that we were equal teachers, so that Tierney, we don't know in your cases, for those of you who are hearing us today, whether or not the librarians are faculty positions or not, but we would encourage trying to approach any kind of collaborative team teaching on an equal playing field to the degree possible. We found it to be a high priority of ours, but more than that, it was then to disrupt the idea that in the class itself, I would deliver content and Tierney would deliver just the technical, the digital material. But instead, I would be involved in the digital aspects, Tierney would be involved in teaching content. So we would try to make sure that the initial, perhaps, preconceptions about the differences in our expertise were blurred to the degree possible.
Yeah, and that's not to say that we didn't take the lead on
Right.
the things that we have expertise in, but we did a lot of kind of blurring of roles and lines and those distinctions, which I think was pretty rad.
Yeah, it's fun too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so the next thing we tried to do is make sure that we address the central assignment of the course, that instead of doing a research paper, we would do research projects that were team projects. So we divided the students based on their own interests into what we called cults, because of the nature of the Defense Against the Dark Arts, surrounding a particular creature, a fantastical creature or beast. So one group, for example, was studying wild hairy hominids, Bigfoot, Yeti type creatures. And so a team of 3 students in that case, and the centerpiece of the course was as much working on the notion of collaboration and the difficulty of doing team-based projects and team-based assessment and things like this, but also that their final product was something that was created by a group of people. And then we needed to make sure that the syllabus included an adequate amount of time to be able to teach the digital skills and allow for in-class collaboration moments and sort of team building projects. We took well over a quarter of the course periods in the class, something about approximating a third of the class periods, to devote away from typical content teaching and devoted it to this central bestiary project, most of which was not content-based, but digital-based.
Yeah, so we carved out, I think it was about 8 class periods over the course of the semester, which were dedicated to what we call tech labs, learning the kind of digital skills that were necessary to the students to be able to create website content and research skills as well. And then also some of the skills I've been talking about earlier, so like writing for the web and kind of, considering their use of images, so things, digital skills and the kind of skills alongside those. And then also gave the students time in class for a couple of tech lab work sessions where they could get together in their groups and with both of us there kind of wrestle with, whatever problems they were encountering and get support from us and have time to be meeting as a group.
Including difficulties they were having with the process of doing collaborative work. So group roles, what strengths each individual could bring to their group work, making sure that there was a workload balance between members of the group, all kinds of personal issues, stuff like that we were involved with that was explicit and not just assume that the students would work that out on their own.
Yeah.
And so then what we tried to do was evaluate the process of building their project and the process of working together and the process of keeping to a timeline of their own creation, things like this.
Yeah, and we adjusted our pedagogy kind of to fit that approach, the assignments, the evaluation, the way we interact with the students and encourage them to interact with each other, kind of with that emphasis of process over product in mind. And to accommodate some of the changes that had to happen to the way content was being learned, the way readings were happening in the course, we changed what had been midterm and final readings tests to regular online pre-flight quizzes that happened in Canvas. Basically, students had to do the readings and then take a short quiz, kind of, it's a little more substantive than multiple choice. So some short essay questions about the readings, kind of gauging comprehension, what kind of, the spots for maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, the pre-flights are designed to be completed by a student the day before class. So at 11 o'clock p.m. the day before we have class. And it's pedagogically one way of ensuring the students are doing the reading. It's also for us to understand what it is that they're struggling with conceptually in terms of the content, so that we can emphasize in our in-class time covering the points about the readings that were most tricky. It can also be our way of evaluating individual student successes and efforts. And so the students who are thriving in the class are ones that we can identify. Students who are struggling are also the ones we can identify and spend more time to work with, bring them up in terms of their own game. But the pre-flights are also a nice way of clearing class time from things like in-class exams and things like this. And they're regular, and the regularity of the quizzes, we had 20 of them over the semester, makes the students get into a certain rhythm of expectations of completing certain work, and it brings a lot more buy-in. I find it to be much more successful in most of my classes than the traditional, please do the readings, come in class, we'll discuss it, and then eventually take a readings test or something. This keeps them consistently doing the reading. So we integrated that as well.
And it was a good way for us to check in with the students as things were going on. And we actually had, I think, 1 or 2 pre-flight quizzes on days where there weren't assigned readings due for them to read. And we instead used that as an opportunity to kind of check in with them, see how things were going, both
How's
in
your
terms
group
of
going?
the group dynamics, or how they felt about kind of the more technical aspects of the project, where they're kind of fuzzy or sticky points. And those were things that we could then kind of cover and emphasize in later tech labs and in work sessions. So next we'll be turning our attention to team teaching, talking a little bit about the collaborative research and the website project that students worked on, and giving you a walkthrough of the website, which I think we're pretty proud of. Talking a little bit about the tech labs, and then kind of ending with our reflections and suggestions, and then our next steps. So in terms of team teaching, this is something that we talked about before, as we were designing the course and wanted to be on the same page about our approach.
Team teaching may be new for some of you who are librarians. And I think a lot of the time faculty exploit librarians, to be blunt, and say, can you come in here and support this class? Can you come in and visit my class for a day to teach them research-based skills or something like this? We wanted to get away from that right away, from the get-go. And Tierney and I are friends. We knew each other before. We share certain academic passions and things like this. So we knew this was a good match of a course in general. But that also brings with it, there's a sense of trust. We knew each other, and that trust has become and became the centerpiece of our working relationship in the classroom itself. There are all kinds of dynamics that happen inside of courses in terms of issues of gender of the professors, in terms of race, in terms of all kinds of identity politics inside of the classroom. In 2018-19 in our classrooms, that's also the priority for a lot of our students. And we wanted to be very sort of hyper aware of these things and to be explicit and open about our dynamics and our issues of authority and in the classroom itself. And so that part of the way that we tried to deal with that was to trust each other very deeply in class, so that if Tierney needed to speak about something, I would relinquish control and trust Tierney, and vice versa.
Yeah, it wasn't a team taught class where here was Eric's space and here was my space, and those two spaces were kept separate. It was the class was ours, and I think for both of us, the experience of team teaching was kind of an experience of kind of relinquishing some control in that kind of that trust process of trusting. You're giving some space for the other person, and you're trusting that they know what they're doing, and that together you're making something that's that much more awesome than something you'd be doing just on your own.
And that can be difficult in different ways for people who are normal faculty and librarians, because for faculty members, relinquishing control where we're often accustomed to being alone in our classes and in control can be one kind of challenge. But for librarians, it can be a different kind of challenge because, as Tierney has phrased it, there's an important sort of self-identification or an awareness of trying to bring one's whole self to the class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll talk a little more about that later
Okay,
too.
good.
Yeah, and from the perspective as a librarian. But I think some of the things that worked for us, so that process of trust, making room for each other to kind of take space as needed, that this was a shared space for both of us, and one we were sharing with our students too. Communicating regularly, having a lot of open communication, giving each other feedback on teaching, if we turning to the other at the end of the session and saying, how do you think that went? What should we change for next time? What worked, what didn't work? Because it actually was it was cool in a lot of ways having, if I'm out there teaching, then I can check in with Eric and see what kind of vibe he's getting from the students or from the room, and see what might I need to adjust, what aren't they quite understanding, what do I need to kind of cover again.
And we were both there every time. So it wasn't as though some days I taught, other days I wasn't there and Tierney taught. We were both in the room. So we were also comfortable chiming in and adding, because sometimes that second pair of eyes is seeing things that the person who's doing the main presenting at that moment is not able to clock.
Yeah. That's a little bit about our approach. And then in terms of just the kind of the nuts and bolts of how we did it, as Eric mentioned, we were at pretty much every class period together. I think there was class period or two where Eric was at a conference, and then I had a family emergency that I had to leave for, and so we kind of handed off the reins
a little bit.
Then. But otherwise, we were both there for every session, which was important.
And we both did all of the grading.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the illusions that comes with the idea of team teaching is that it's half as much work. We found that team teaching is at least 100% of a normal class amount of work. Because not only are you doing all of the grading and all of the reading and attending every class period, but we're having a lot of sort of meta meetings where we're talking about the team teaching and things like this. So the amount of time that we had to dedicate to the process was enormous. It is a lot, yes.
Yeah, and we were very intentional about the way we set out to do this. We were both present at meetings that we had with the student teams. We communicated jointly with the students, and if they forgot to include one of us on an email, we looped the other in, because it wasn't that here I am doing website stuff and then here's Eric doing the content for the course. We were both fully embedded in all aspects. Yeah. So in terms of our class website, which we called the Digital Bestiary website, I will move out here and we'll give you just a little walkthrough of the website, which the address was there on the slide. It's bestiary.ds for digital scholarship.guilford.edu. You can see here, we can go out, I think maybe to the Chinese fox spirits. So up here in the menu, you can see the different species that the students focus on for their comparative
Baba
projects.
Yaga, fox spirits, dragons and nagas,
and you can see there's
mermaids,
drop downs for different pages. They kind of had a lot of free reign to organize content the way they wanted. So if we go out here to Chinese fox spirits. Yeah, there we go. So they had a lot of fun with WordPress, I think. So you can see here, they've got a story and a quote here.
Each of the projects involved a story map or time map tool. So that was one of the digital skills we wanted to teach the students, is how to be able to do this and become comfortable and fluent enough with it they can use it outside of our classroom in future projects and in their education and beyond.
Yeah, and they did these using, it's a tool called StoryMap.js, and then timelines with the companion tool called Timeline.js. So students worked, they worked very hard on their research projects and also on kind of all the work around that too, how they were going to organize content, place it on the page, the playing around with the different features in WordPress, and how they wanted to, how they wanted that kind of reading experience to happen for the website audience.
And so each of these projects is authored by several students. fully researched with certain guidelines in the prompt in the syllabus, has explicitly a little part that says they need to learn how to defend themselves against these creatures as part of the defense against the dark arts, after all. That was done mostly for fun, but it became a nice little thing. And links internally to other subsets of individual student research. So for example, this team, they divided it up. So one group worked on fox spirits and the role of gender. One wrote about the trickster archetype, and et cetera, et cetera. They embed videos, they embed images, all properly attributed and involve.
And we worked on them with around citation. We also worked with them when we talked about creating content for the web around notions of web accessibility and creating an accessible, web page and adding alt text to images and making sure videos have, available closed captions, that kind of thing. So who's Baba Yaga.
So please feel free to explore the website. We're also eager for any feedback. We will grow this website based on student-generated interest. The idea here is that we did not assign these projects to students. They chose them. We really believe very deeply in student buy-in to their own passions here. We wanted them to be motivated, and we also wanted them to be generating parts of their own curriculum in terms of their own learning. Subject to our oversight, of course, but we were flexible. We would give them direction about the comparative nature of their projects and about some sources and resources and how to do research. We discussed this explicitly in periods of the course, but we give them a lot of flexibility. No two of these projects are modeled similarly to each other. They're all quite different. And some of them are not particularly successful. And that's important too. The students own these projects. So some of the bestiary entries are not particularly academically awesome. Others are. And they got the same grade. The whole group got the same grade on the project. But again, only 10% of the grade for the project was the final product. Most of the grading for these projects was the process of creating them.
Yeah, that's what was most important for us. A little bit about the nitty-gritty of the website, if you're interested. So as I mentioned earlier, students did some sort of dynamic multimedia component that was using StoryMap.js or Timeline.js. The website itself is a WordPress website, which we hosted with Reclaim Hosting, which definitely recommend. It was a great hosting experience, and we're excited to keep growing the site.
Hosting experience.
A little bit about the tech labs for the course, just to kind of showcase the way we broke down the content around digital literacy and digital competencies that we were teaching the students. So we had a kind of at the beginning of the semester kind of introductory tech lab covering the website project, that kind of big picture view, how we've broken down those skills, and we're going to be teaching those to them and when. We also held our sorting ceremony then. We dressed up, both of us, in our robes and brought a sorting cat and sorted the students into their research cults based on surveys that they had given us about kind of their interests and working habits. So that we created those groups, which I think was kind of helpful to avoid,
and fun
dynamics. Yeah, and it was fun. It was fun.
Fun is key.
And I think they made a lot of good and interesting connections. Yeah.
They feel like they want to be in the groups they're in. It's like wanting to be in Gryffindor once you've been sorted, So.
Yeah, I have drummed up the suspense and stuff. It was a lot of fun. They enjoyed it, and so did we. And then a little later in the semester, a research tech lab to kind of get them started on doing research for the projects. Then our WordPress tech lab covering using WordPress, using Gutenberg, and creating content for the web. Then delving a little more deeply into writing and images on the web, which is kind of like WordPress part 2. Then a session on StoryMap.js and Timeline.js, and then
one thing I think we might have done a little bit differently, might do differently, is bring the StoryMap and Timeline.js tech lab earlier, because they're already pretty deep into their research, but they don't quite have a vision of how it's going to look as a web project yet. And once we taught them that, they began to see, okay, we were too ambitious, or we were not being ambitious enough, or how can we present the information we found when we're accustomed to writing research papers into this sort of interactive digital format.
And then the last two tech labs were work sessions, which we talked about a little bit before, but intentionally we had one work session just a couple days before their project drafts were due to kind of give them that time, okay, like let's get some content on the website, you know, work in your groups.
And then we could give them a lot of feedback after their first
questions,
drafts were due, yeah.
And then another work session kind of soon before the finished project was due to kind of help that final push of doing that work. So in terms of some of our reflections and suggestions based on this experience, I think probably the first major piece for us is that when you're adding this kind of digital project component to an existing course, you're going to need to cut content and
a lot of it.
Adjust your expectations.
You have to cut a lot of content. Maybe a third of the content has to just disappear, and then a little bit more. That's fine. I think it did not really diminish the students' learning in the course. I think what's gained is far outweighs what's lost. But a lot needs to be cut. A lot of space needs to be made for the digital project.
And so the time for students to kind of get those skills, to work through the collaborative group work process, takes up a lot of time.
The students were complaining about the workload and the speed of the whole thing, even though they've known from day one, eyes wide open, what they needed to achieve. And it was important for us also to be firm about the timeline and the deadlines. It was a rigorous course. It was a challenging course. And some people rose to the challenge without problems. Other students, you know, wanted to rise up against the timeline that we had for them. So it was, in that sense, I think, good for everybody involved, but also sort of tough to hold that line.
Yeah, and this is something, I think, speaking to something Eric mentioned earlier, is just giving the students the freedom to run with the project and kind of to soar and just really dive so deeply into it and create something awesome that we could never even have imagined. And then also maybe to, you know, put this project on the back burner over the course of the semester, be focusing on other things in their majors or, you know, things going on in their lives, and maybe, you know, not do quite as well as we might have hoped, and to kind of accept that it's their project. You know, even though it's public on the web and it has, you know, has our names on it, that this is the students' project, and so, you know, they're gonna own their work. I think that was important too, because, you know, we wanted to go in there and like tidy up typos and do things like that.
Right, we let the typos stand, so you know, they own their own work, and I think they felt that differently than they would in a research paper as well.
Absolutely.
So I think it actually was on that level much more beneficial for them as well. You want to mention about
my last thought of kind of reflecting after the process of teaching this course with Eric is to say to fellow librarians who are interested in doing something like this and who are maybe new to it, to not be afraid to bring your whole self to the classroom. Because I think a lot of the work we do when we're coming in for a one shot or, you know, just a session or two, that, you know, we don't feel the same ownership of the classroom necessarily, because it's someone else's class, the topic, someone else's students, you know. So I think this experience has taught me a lot about not being afraid to bring my whole self to the classroom, even in sessions that I'm teaching as a one shot, and just kind of being, you know, feeling free to just be my, you know, goofy self and being okay with that, and realizing that that's actually, you know, that's better teaching that way, and the students enjoy it more. They enjoyed my Harry Potter gifs and my Buffy gifs throughout my slides over the course of the semester. So that was something that was a nice sort of learning moment for me. And then in terms of our next steps, so for teaching this course in the future, is that we want to continue to teach it in subsequent semesters, and keep this central digital project component and keep growing the website. Yeah,
I think one of the things that is the most important takeaway about this experience of this course, and one of the things that's most exciting about it, is that in the course of a single semester, we built a website, which is pretty awesome. It's doable. It can be done in one semester while still delivering deep course content about a particular subject. It can be done. It would be very difficult to do by oneself. So the team teaching, above and beyond being valuable for students and having more than one instructor, is also very valuable that we are able to do something together that we couldn't do in a course by ourselves. And that is exciting for the students, and they feel proud to share the URL for our website with their families and their friends. And it's pretty neat to have a product that's different than a research paper that a professor might read once, give a grade, give back, no one else will ever read. This time their work exists out there the way that it's contributing.
Yeah, I felt a lot of ownership over that.
Yeah,
it was
for sure.
Ultimately something exciting for them. So we want to continue to teach this course and just, make adjustments based on feedback from students, our own feedback, and keep tweaking it, but ultimately kind of keep that core the same. I think it was a successful teaching experience.
Yep.
So thanks so much for your engagement. That's the end of our program.
One last thing I'd like to say, which is just the emphasis on the importance of carving enough space, if you're a librarian, from your boss, from the structure at your college, to be able to truly teach, to be able to pull something like this off. We got permission for Tierney to have the space in Tierney's workload to be able to devote to fully teaching a course. And I got permission to team teach.
I'm grateful that I had a supportive boss who gave me the space to do this and saw how this would enrich my work, as a librarian.
And if it feels impossible, try to plan far out in advance. Say spring of 2021, can I team teach a course with Professor so-and-so? And then make sure that you've carved enough time out of one's other responsibilities to be able to devote it, because otherwise the balance of the teaching and the balance of the authority and the balance of the roles will get thrown off, and it won't feel like the balanced collaborative experiment that you want it to be, right? And that's hard. We understand that there are restrictions for a lot of you about the idea of team teaching a course, but we encourage you to try to get permission to do so and plan it in advance, and encourage you to give it a shot. It's a wonderful experience for both of us.
Absolutely. So do you have any questions for us?
Tierney, can you see the chat?
Yeah, so I see a question from Caitlin Kennedy. Curious how you all assess students' learning during the course, surveys, assignments, informal feedback, etc., and whether you made any changes to your instruction in response to their feedback. Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. Do you want to?
Sure. Yes, surveys. We did ask them to fill out assessment rubrics that they knew of in advance, so they knew how they would be assessed before it happened, and then they would fill out assessing their teammates, assessing themselves. They would also assess the course in general. They would talk about what their big worries are, where they're feeling the most pressures. And so, for example, we did cut back on sort of how onerous some of the pre-flight quizzes were as we were going, because students were saying, this is taking too much time. This is too hard, folks. And we took that into consideration. There are places that we did not adjust, regardless of what students were saying, which was too much reading, too much reading, too much reading. But that's the nature of my pedagogy, and that was the nature of the beast that we wanted to create. We also believe deeply that academics should be rigorous, and so we didn't give in all the time or adjust all the time, but we did make adjustments when we thought they were reasonable and that we hadn't foreseen. The student comments sometimes took us by surprise, and we did adjust accordingly for sure.
Yeah, and we used the pre-flight quizzes as a space to kind of not just ask questions about the reading, but also meta questions about the course itself, about the tech labs and the tech learning, what points were, maybe still a little fuzzy for students, what things could use, might be helpful to them to go over something again.
Also, the stages of the project included things like, once they were sorted into a group, they needed to make more or less a proposal about what it was they were going to study, narrowing the foci of their research projects, identifying some sources, and then that was evaluated. And then we met individually, or not individually, but the two of us with each group. So that was very time consuming, but very valuable. Also, there was a first draft of their final product in a sense, and we did spent a lot of energy evaluating that and then there was a lot of revision. Their final product was not given as many comments or as much attention as initial drafts of it. And some of them, some of their first drafts really alerted us to places where we could strengthen the pedagogy aspects of it, that we could do a little bit better job perhaps in helping them find sources online. Just fundamental research skills that we might take for granted a little bit, that we could spend more time emphasizing in class, or about how to deal with images and how to best source images. Things like that, that we thought we had taught adequately, and we may in future iterations of the course put more emphasis on such things. So yeah, the process actually helps us know how to teach the course better, for sure. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We tried. I'm responding to the comment here from Caitlin Kennedy. Tried to get as much feedback as possible. It's very hard for me to get out of the mindset of evaluating product. And so, you know, I could probably do a better job of that. That's hard for me to do. That's something, the collaboration stuff I'm down with, but I'm very product focused as a teacher in general. I want people to own the papers that they produce. So in a sense, it's hard to get out of the mindset of evaluating product over process, but that's, or process over product. That's a good thing. But it's a skill that is taking me time to learn. Yeah.
And I'm sharing here in the chat a link to our website, which was linked in the presentation, but in case we glossed over it too quickly for you to grab it. And our website does have, I think our syllabus is linked there. I think it's on the About page, if you wanted to go out and take a look.
Feel free to use it too. Feel free to teach it.
And you can see kind of how we broke things down in terms of emphasizing process over product, and chunked the digital project itself into the
what percentage of
process and the research proposal, and then the peer evaluations.
And what percentages of people's grades come from what aspects of it. So they got all that at the outset. That was really important. Also providing rubrics for the students early so they know how they'll be evaluated. They don't feel ambushed. They know what they're supposed to be contributing. That was also very important to the process of evaluating the process.
Absolutely. Any other questions for us?
Yeah, we're eager for questions. For us, part of this stemmed from a push at Guilford College to delve into the digital humanities. We prefer to call it digital scholarship because it seems slightly arbitrary that the emphasis is sometimes on the humanities, even though we appreciate the need for humanities to get support and to augment digital skills. Nevertheless, this is new for Guilford to a degree. It's not like it wasn't going on in some capacities before, but explicitly as such, this is relatively new at Guilford. So we had a bit of support here for summer course development, things like this.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think still, from my point of view as a religious studies professor, the most important thing was that Tierney got the institutional support to be a co-equal teacher in this endeavor. That was the key. Without that, this wouldn't have worked. It would have been a very different creature. It would have felt like the good old-fashioned, I'm the teacher, Tierney's supporting. And that's not what we wanted to do. That's not what I was interested in or Tierney was interested in doing. And without that institutional support, it's very hard to get this off the ground. So that would be the key recommendation I have for anybody who wants to do this themselves, is to make sure you have the support in writing, all clear as a bell, for the librarians to be able to be co-equal teachers.
And I'm grateful that we had that support, and that I had
yeah.
Eric was on the same page as me, and he was even maybe several pages ahead of me around all this, and that he's such a strong advocate for, you know, my work as a teacher, and to be able to do this course. It was definitely an awesome experience.
I think it's great for the students too. It's not just great for us. It's better for students to have 2 teachers or 3 teachers, truly. And we don't always agree. You know, we might differ. We might disagree in the classroom. The students love that. That's cool, right? It's okay. We don't have to be like cheerleaders for each other all the time. We can interject, we can challenge, we have different styles, we have different emphases, and it's the juxtaposition and jazz that happens with the multiple perspectives that makes learning much more engaging for the students themselves. And so the collaboration is us, it's them collaborating, it's collaborating as groups to build the website, it's public facing, it's a deeply collaborative sort of foundation to the whole course. The concept of collaboration is infused throughout the course, not just in the team teaching aspect.
We modeled what we were hoping for the students to accomplish. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your engagement. I think we're probably at time, so.
Emery, I think we're there at time, but folks, please feel invited to also offline email or off this format, email us or contact us if you have specific questions or general questions, or if you have feedback for us. Anything, we're happy to hear from you and really grateful for this opportunity.
We've got our emails on the slide. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to talk to other folks doing this kind of work or who are thinking about doing this kind of work and create a community of practice around that.
Absolutely. So thanks for the opportunity and for being patient to hear us out about our project. And we encourage you to enjoy our website and use it, share it, use the syllabus, share it. We're open about it. It's fine.